and we are going strong.
Yo, 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 yo.
Throw your back on me when I'm talking. Baby, throw your back on me. Make I give you weekly doggy. I been throw your back on me when I'm talking. Oh, I need some company. Shabali, throw your back on me. Make I give you weekly doggy. Girl, you know, throw your back on me when I'm talking.
Alright.
Throw your back on me.
This is Oreo by Dreshie. I think this is the first track off of his Genesis EP. And today, we're going to do the mix breakdown for this record. In my last video, I actually did the beat breakdown for this song. I'm going to leave a link here. Today, we're going to look at my mixing and mastering process. And hopefully, you can pick up something you can use in your own record, okay? I mixed and mastered this song in Logic, so that means this is sort of like an old project now. It's not like it's old, but it's old. Because I have since moved my mixing and mastering operations to Pro Tools. However, my mixing process stayed the same. I still fix problems first before I get into anything. So let's start with the drums. Let's see what I did on this mix. I'm not even sure I can remember everything I did here, so we're just going to explore together. The first thing here is the kick. Love it. So what I'm doing here is gain staging first. So I'm using the gain plugin to turn down the levels by -5 dB so I can have decent headroom before I get into my processing. And I'm also using the FabFilter Pro QE3, as you can see, to do a bit of a low cut up to 20 Hertz to round off that low frequency and keep everything tight. If we go over to the next instrument here, which is a rim. Yeah, I'm doing the same thing as well. -5 dB with the gain plugin and also using the FabFilter Pro QE3 to do a low cut to roll out all the frequencies that I don't need. Like I mentioned before in one of my videos, you have to make sure you are not cutting to the actual sound when you're doing your cuts, right? So one way to deal with the FabFilter Pro QE3 is to solo. Look at that. So now we're getting to the sound. You don't want to do that. You just want to make sure you're in a place where you are removing unwanted frequencies, but also retaining the actual sound, because this is one very quick way to people's songs. And I'm pretty much doing the same thing for all of the instruments and the drums. Sometimes I'll actually also do a high cut to roll off high frequencies that are not needed. Like in the case of this bongo right here. Sometimes I would actually do this just to roll off, right? Because technically this percussion sound doesn't have any important information around 3K and up. And by doing this, you'll be creating space for the instruments that have information around 3K and up, like your synths or vocals. Man, this time around I didn't do it. It's something that you can actually consider, especially if you have like a lot of instruments in the song. That's when creating space for each instrument like this is very, very important, so that every instrument has its own space within the mix. But for this record, I didn't bother to do that. You know what, let's zoom into the wave so we can actually see what we are doing here. I like to do this a lot, especially when I'm stripping silence from vocals so that I don't cut into the actual vocals. And it's actually very, very easy. You just come and click and hold this wave button here, and then you can zoom in to increase the size of the wave. You are not affecting the level of the audio file, by the way. You're just only increasing the size so you can see better. Again, the same process for all of the drums. This record does not actually have a lot of instruments at all. If you watch the beat breakdown, you see that this was actually one of the easiest beats I ever made in my life. But there's also something I'm doing here to give this drum a bit more punch and to really make the quiet parts of the drums cut through in the mix, and that's parallel compression. And to do this is very simple. You're going to select all of the drums, and once you do that, you're going to send all of the drums to a new bus, and that's this bus right here. I've named the parallel drums, and I'm using the UAD 1176 Rev A compressor to compress the hell out of the drums. Remember that we are doing a send here, so we're not routing, we are sending. So which means we're only sending a copy of the drums to the parallel drum bus, which is very important because we just want to blend that with the original drum sound. Let's listen to how that sounds actually. Right. You see that it's very, very heavily compressed. Now with this setting that I have going on here, you're able to add more punch to the drums as well as bring up the low information on the drum loop. So we have the attack set to relatively slow and then the release set to the fastest. I set the input and output to text, and I've also set the ratio to the maximum amount of ratio you can get with this compressor, and that gives you more or less like a limiting function, if you will. Hold shift and click all of them. You're going to get the highest amount of ratio you can get with this compressor, and that's what you need for your parallel drum compression. Okay, before we get to the bass, I forgot to mention that I actually have all of my drums routed to my drum bus, and that's where I'm doing the compression for the drums. And I'm using the UAD LA2 compressor for that. This compressor is actually quite nice when you're trying to make your drums big without losing a lot of headroom. And I'm not even doing so much compression here, as you can see. Yeah. The needle is barely moving, but you can already hear how it's making the drum sound thick. If you don't have a UAD version of this, you can actually just use CLA2A from Waves. Yeah, and that will give you the same result. And then for the bass, I'm not doing too much here, as you can see. I'm not even doing any gain staging because I felt like I had enough headroom to go into the rest of my processing. And I'm doing a low cut up to, again, 20 Hertz just to round off the low end. And this is routed straight to my bass bus because I also have another bass routed to that bus as well. Yeah, this 808. Right, and both of them are going through the same compressor, this UAD LA2A compressor as well. Again, I'm not doing too much here. Yeah, I'm just doing up to like 1 dB of gain reduction. You know, I'm just trying to keep the bass tight, basically. Again, if you watch the beat breakdown, you would see that this beat doesn't have a lot of instruments. What am I doing here with this piano? I'm not doing any gain staging. The level was good enough for me, but I'm using the Pro Q3 EQ to remove some unwanted frequencies. Let's check them out. Yeah. Right, so I've done a high pass up to 62 Hertz, and I'm doing a dynamic cut around 308 Hertz up to, I guess we could say, minus 2.6 dB of gain reduction here. But this is a dynamic cut. The EQ is not just turning down the level of the signal at this range, right? We're only turning down the level of the signal that exceeds the threshold that this EQ has set. This EQ actually has an automatic threshold thing. If you look carefully, you see that the EQ is actually only turning down signals that are peaking. Listen. Right? Right. And that's what I'm trying to target. It will appear that I have actually made a mistake with this mix, but it turned out to be good. This first track that we just looked at was the melody bus from my FL session. Right, that's why you can also hear that sound, the impact sound. Wow. And then this is the actual piano. But I think it actually worked for me because what I did here was I panned this one to the right to just kind of create this, I guess you can say, 3D feel. I mean, happy mistakes, man. Happy mistakes. How can I say? That's one thing with music, man. Just enjoy yourself. Oh yeah, this is the Somatics E piano. There's something I actually did here to make the beginning of this song sound interesting. I'm doing a speed up effect to create this tape roll. Right? It's actually quite dope, and it's very easy to do. The first thing you want to do if you're trying to create this effect is to first of all create a fade in. Go T and go to a fade tool, which is A, and you just click and drag, and that's our fade in. And then the next thing you want to do is right click and go to speed up. Right now it's automatically selected to speed up because I've done all of these other speed ups here, but that's what you would do. First of all, you create fade in, and then you right click, and then you go to speed up. And then from here you can increase or reduce the speed of the speed up by clicking and dragging this down or up. When it goes up, it's slower. When it goes down, it's faster. That's just it, basically. I mean, it's a nice way to start the song, if you ask me. What are these two tracks? Okay, these are the reverb and delay sends from my FL session. I'm not even doing anything to these ones, but I've also routed them to my melody bus, and this is where I'm doing my compression as usual. I'm also using the LA2 compressor for this. This is my favorite compressor when I'm doing bus compression. I feel like it handles multiple instruments at the same time very, very well. Now let's go into the vocals.
Girl, it is this mind for me, oh. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, oh. She goes red and white for me, oh. When she swipe my card and the thing no decline money, oh. I go bump and grind for you, oh. It's a miracle, girl.
The vocals in this song sound very, very good. Now let's look at the lead vocals. Again, my process is the same. I'm doing gain staging first to make sure I have the right levels before I go into my processing. On the main track itself, I have the gain plugin and I've turned it down up to -8 dB. I think this gave me enough headroom to do what I need to do with this record. And then I have the UAD auto tune, bang, this one. So on the main track, that's where I'll put the gain plugin for my gain staging as well as the auto tune. Now the rest of the processing is going to be happening in my vocal bus. So I've routed this lead track to my lead vocal bus. So if I have multiple leads, I would route all of them to my lead vocal bus. That's how I like to mix.
It's mine for me, oh. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, oh. She go.
Again, the process is the same. Fix problems first. In this case, use a noise suppressor to remove any noise that would be in the recording. I'm actually not even doing so much with the noise suppressor. It's just here as part of my vocal chain. And the next thing I did here is use the Pro Q3 EQ to remove resonant frequencies.
She goes spread and white for me, oh. When she swipe my card and the thing no decline money, oh. I go bump and grind for you, oh.
That's crazy. I'm going to leave a link here to a video to show you how you can do this from scratch. But this is very, very effective, and this is something that you should always do. And I recommend you do this with a dynamic EQ. So that way you're not removing all of the signals around a certain frequency range. You would only be removing signals that are exceeding the threshold that you set. Only the signals that are peaking. Do you understand what I'm saying? Very, very important. But you can use any EQ to do this, essentially. And then the next plugin on the vocal chain is the RDSer. Again, this is part of the fix problems first of the vocal process. So we've removed noise if there was noise, resonant frequencies, and now we're using the RDSer to remove sibilance from the vocals.
It's mine for me, oh. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, oh. She goes.
Now, if you look up here, you see that we're doing up to -1.4 dB of attenuation, right? Again, I'm not trying to remove all of the S's. I'm just trying to tame them, okay? I've also set the DSL to capture sibilance from 3,500 kilohertz and up. And then the next plugin on the vocal chain is the SSL channel strip. This is how you know this project was mixed a while ago, because now I no longer use the Wave SSL channel strip. I use the UAD one now because it has the brown mode, and the brown mode sounds very, very good for vocals. This is where I start to shape the tone of the vocals. So let's look at what I've done here. If we go down to the low frequency, I'm doing up to -12 dB of gain reduction. Oh, actually that's -13, around, you can say 270 hertz. And then for the low mid frequency, I'm doing up to -10 dB of gain reduction, around 890 hertz or 0.89 kilohertz. And I've set the bell to a wide bell curve. I actually recommend that you set the bell to be a tighter bell curve first, and then roll up to the wider side and hear how it sounds. And then you can decide where you like it to be. And then on the high mid frequency, I'm doing a cut up to -3 dB, around 3 kilohertz. Around 3 kilohertz is where there's usually harshness in the vocals. So you want to tame that first before you get into your compression. Wide bell curve as well. And then on the high frequencies, I am doing a boost up to 5 dB, around 16 kilohertz, to add air to the vocals. And then from here, we're going to go into the first compressor in the vocal chain. I like to compress in series. I use the first compressor to tame the vocals, and I use the second compressor to even out the performance of the vocals. And now for the first compressor, we're using the 1176 compressor from Waves this time around. I mean, this was back in the day. Now I prefer to use the UAD version of the 1176, but you can still obviously get great sounding vocals when you use the Waves plugin. I mean, you can hear, right? This compressor is a fixed threshold compressor, okay? So the more you drive into the input, the more compression you get. Ratio to 4:1, which is great for vocals. Mix all the way to 100, analog, 60 hertz. I'm never sure I remember what this does anymore, but anyways. Again, the idea behind the first compressor is to first of all tame the peaks in the vocal performance. Let's listen to that.
Wide for me, oh. When she swipe my card and the thing no decline money, oh. I go bum bang grind for you, oh.
So if you look at that, you see that the needle is only moving when he screams. So we're only taming the picks with this compressor, okay? And then the next plugin on the vocal chain is the Pro MB multiband compressor. Now this is where I do the final shaping of the tone of the vocals. This is my secret weapon when it comes to vocal processing. Actually, let's bypass the multiband compressor and hear the difference that it makes in the vocals. So before,
it's mine for me, oh. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, oh. She goes,
and then after.
It's mine for me, oh. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, oh. She goes spread damn wide for me, oh.
Now for this record, the difference is very, very minute, okay? But it does add that final polish to the vocals. And then the next plugin on the vocal chain is the CLA2A compressor. The purpose of this compressor is to even out the overall performance of the vocals. Let's listen to that.
It's mine for me, oh. Hey. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, oh. She goes spread damn wide for me, oh. When she swipe my card and the thing no decline money, oh. I go bum bang grind for you, oh.
Right, I think I'm getting up to -2, -3 dB of gain reduction at the max. But sometimes I would actually go as far as -5, -7 if I'm trying to get that really compressed sound. Let's listen to what that would sound like if I did it.
Mine for me, oh. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, oh. She goes spread damn wide for me, oh. When she swipe my card and the thing no decline money, oh. I go bum bang grind for you, oh. It's a miracle, girl. Let me be a soldier. Make I ride and slide for you, oh. From a booty meta over the Caribbean. And she got the body, oh. Sweet. Mine for me, oh. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, oh. She goes spread damn wide for me, oh. When she swipe my card and the thing no decline money, oh. I go bum bang grind for you, oh. It's a miracle, girl. Let me be a soldier. Make I ride and slide for you, oh. From a booty meta over the Caribbean. Mine for me, oh. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, oh. She goes spread damn wide for me, oh. When she swipe my card and the thing no decline money, oh. I go bum bang grind for you, oh. It's a miracle, girl. Let me be a soldier. Make I ride and slide for you, oh. From a booty meta over the Caribbean.
You know what? I think if I actually mixed and mastered this song now, I would have used this compressor settings. I like the way it sounds a bit thicker. But this is what we did for the original song.
Mine for me, oh. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, oh. She goes spread damn wide for me, oh. When she swipe my card and the thing no decline money, oh. I go bum bang grind for you, oh. It's a miracle, girl. Let me be a soldier. Make I ride and slide for you, oh.
I mean, yeah, now it has more thickness to it. Again, this is what happens when you mix songs. You grow, you change, you learn, you do things differently. But that does not mean that we did not create a dope mix from before. I mean, as you can clearly hear, it sounds good still.
Mine for me, oh. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, oh. She goes spread damn wide for.
Right, it sounds good, but there's always room for improvement. So yeah, this is the function of this compressor to even out the overall performance of the vocals. And then the next plugin on my vocal chain is the Pro DS. The purpose of this DS, like I mentioned many times, is to capture all of the sibilants that would have built up due to all the processes that we've done, right? And that happens quite a lot.
Mine for me, oh. Hey. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, oh. She goes spread damn wide for me, oh. When she swipe my card and decline on me, oh.
Right, so you can hear that. So that's what it's taking out from the vocals to keep it smooth and enjoyable. All right, let's look at the settings real quick. I've set the DSL to capture sibilants from 4 kilohertz and up, doing up to -40 dB for threshold, range up to 15 dB. That will be the maximum amount of gain reduction that we'll get with the DSL, basically. That's what the range does. Now from here, we're going to go into the time-based effects. Like you already know, I like to work with 2 reverbs. So I have my first reverb, which is the room reverb, okay? And then I have the main reverb and then I have my delay. For the room reverb, I'm using the Fab Filter Pro R. I've set the reverb time to 0.058 seconds. Very, very short reverb time, very short pre-delay time. This is just to create that room effect, basically. And then for the main reverb, I'm using the H reverb. You know, I've set my reverb time, set my pre-delay time. And then for our delay, I'm using the Comeback Kit by Baby Audio, one of my favorite delays. And I've set this to a quarter note, straight, ping pong. Feedback is about 20. And then I'm sending signals up to, you can say, -24 dB into the delay bus.
It's mine for me, oh. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, oh. She goes spread damn wide for me, oh. When she swipe my card and the thing no decline money, yo. I go.
Let's go over to the ad-lib.
Smile for me, yo. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, yo. No decline money, yo. Crying for you, oh.
The processing for the ad-libs and backups is pretty much the same as the processing for the lead, but I usually will just EQ a little bit differently so that the backups or the ad-libs and the leads are not occupying the same frequency range. But one thing I'm also doing for this record is using big reverb for the ad-libs, right? As you can hear.
Smile for me, yo. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, yo. She goes spread damn white for me, yo. When she swipe my card and
right, just to create that whole 3D effect. And I'm using the Pro R reverb as well for this. I've set my reverb time, but I've also set a longer pre-delay time here because I want you to hear the vocals first before the reverb comes after. Do you understand? So I've set the reverb time that is pretty much times 2 the pre-delay time. So I've set the pre-delay time that's pretty much times 2 the pre-delay time that I'm using for my main reverb, basically. And then I've also added more delay to the ad-libs as well to create that interesting tail that you're hearing.
smile for me, yo. Only 22, but she shine 32 for me, yo. She goes spread damn white for me, yo. When she swipe my card and the thing no decline money, yo. I go bump and grind for you, it's a miracle, girl. Let me be a soldier. Make a ride and
you know, just to fill up the whole space. And that's it. I'm not doing anything differently for the chorus.
Throw your back on me when I'm talking. Baby, throw your back on me. Make I give you weekly doggy. I been no throw your back on me when I'm talking. No, I need some company. Shabali, throw your back on me. Make I give you weekly doggy. Killing no throw your back on me when I'm talking. Baby, throw your back on me. Make weekly doggy. I know I need some company. Shabali, throw your back on me. Make I give you weekly doggy. I want to kill it.
Yeah, man, that's all. That's really everything that we did for this record. Oh, but that's not all though. There's also something that I've done here to keep the record very interesting. As you can see, I've automated the delay feedback and also the delay send to create this very interesting feel for the record. So it's not the same throughout. So in certain part of the record, you get more delay essentially, like here. Let's listen to what's happening here.
that is class. Cause I put the magic like jazz. She be a me no need that she baby, yo.
Comes down.
Give me your magic, I'm a cast. Yeah, running like I could play on my life.
Right? This is something I do a lot to keep the record interesting. It's not static. Very, very important. And actually, let me show you how to do this. So let's say we want to create automation for the reverb, for example. We're going to go over to the bus, click automation mode and select touch or latch, whichever one you prefer. Personally, I like latch. So now once we've done that, we're going to go over to the send that we wish to automate, play the record,
Baby girl,
and just
like you
move
wine
it.
for me, cause it's been a long time I done this.
So as you can see now, we've created automation for our reverb. So from here, we're just going to go ahead and click and do whatever we wish to do to the automation, basically. And also, if you wanted to create automation curves to make the automation go faster or slower, you know, you can press T on the keyboard, go to automation curve tool, or you can just press T and W, it takes you right there, and then you can just click, and then you see, you can make the automation curve anyhow you want it to. So that's how you automate your sends. And if you want to automate the parameters of a plugin in your bus, like I've done here with the feedback in my delay bus, all you have to do is select the bus, press A to bring up the automation, and then come down to the automation parameter, click and go over to whatever parameter you wish to automate. In this case, it's the feedback for the comeback kit. As you can see, the possibilities are endless, right? That's it. You just select what you want to automate and then draw your automation and have some fun. So that's everything we've done for the mix for this record. I don't think there's anything else to talk about.